Can I ask you all to stand for prayers, please? Thank you. Creator and sustainer of all things and all people, you are the source of all wisdom and light. Enlighten our minds to receive your guidance so that you may lead us into true wisdom. May all that we say and do in the service of this county, whether as elected members or as officers, be in accordance with your will and for the good of your people. Amen. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, would everyone leave by one of the two exits at the rear of the council chamber? Officers will be on hand to assist any people with disabilities. Mobile phones. Let's try again. Thank you. May I ask all members who have mobile phones with them to ensure that they are switched off so that they will not disturb the meeting. Thank you. Agenda item 1, Chairman's announcement. I'm sorry for that.
Hello, mine's working.
We're on again. Right, we'll try this. Brian Roberts. Brian will be retiring from County Council at the end of this month after more than 12 years with us as Director of Corporate Resources. Try that. He previously worked as the Deputy Corporate Director of Finance at Staffordshire County Council. Previously had worked in Merseyside and Hampshire. Brian has led and overseen significant changes in the last 12 years and has made a major contribution to modernising and transforming the shape of the council. We have reaped the benefits of Brian's considerable energy and drive, and he has led on a number of really successful major changes programmes, such as the implementation of the Council's accommodation strategy and the creation of East Midlands Shared Services. He has always ensured that robust financial management arrangements have been in place, and that as a council we maintain a focus on medium-term financial planning. This has placed us in a far more secure position than we would otherwise have been, and Brian deserves a huge credit for this. He has also been able to lead the Corporate Resource Department, reshaping key services, and has also been instrumental in creating and driving our Ambition Transforming programme. Brian has acted as Deputy to the Chief Executive. Overall, and in every way, he has made a significant corporate contribution to the leadership and reputation of this council, and is well respected by members and officers. In 2016-17, Brian was president of SIPFA, which not only provided him with national and international platforms to discuss key public sector issues, but also helped to raise the profile of the County Council. I invite all members to join me in wishing Brian a long and happy retirement. The Record Office accreditation. I am pleased to report that Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland officially received accreditation award Accreditation is the standard award by the National Archives Services, which demonstrates competence and excellence in core areas such as collections, management, access and outreach. Less than 5% of the archive services in this country have met the standards, so this was an absolutely very proud achievement. I'm sure members will wish to join me in congratulating the staff of the Records Office. So again, I think they deserve a clap. I welcome all visitors and guests and members, and of course everyone who is joining us on webcast today. Item 2. I move the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 21st of February 2018, copies of which have been circulated to members, has been taken as read, confirmed and signed. And have a seconder, please.
Second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr O'Shea. Item 3, declarations of interest. I invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for the meeting. There are none. Thank you. Item 7, questions and understanding and asks understanding orders. And I do believe, Mr Hunt, you have two supplementary questions.
Can I be heard? Yeah. Okay. I'd invite members to look at page 2 on the green sheets, answers 2 and 3, which are, and I thank the leader for this, most illuminating, indicating that after over a year's work with Chelmsford Borough Council, proposals have come forward which all parties agreed to and are now withdrawn by Chelmsford Borough Council. And I'd simply ask the lead member two things, really. One, can we in future give more credit to proposals from members as opposed to borough councils that are going to let us down? And secondly, doesn't this speak volumes for unitary authorities when one authority is instructing another authority and then withdrawing those instructions? Thank you.
Mr Payne.
There we go. Can I thank Manx for his supplementary question? In terms of member involvement, consultations exist for all parties to communicate and submit their thoughts on all proposals, and I think that is a satisfactory process. In terms of the unitary authority comment, that's not for me to answer, so I make no comment. Thank you.
Thank you. For your second question, your supplementary, Mr Hunt, please.
Madam Chairman, again, this is a very useful response which tells us a lot about how the contracts are running between London and St Pancras for the benefit of Leicestershire. And it strikes me reading from this that this is not a problem that's going to end this year. It's a problem that's going to continue. So the question is, are we adding the interaction with commuter trains and through trains to the list of concerns we have and investment we want to see in the Midland Main Line? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Payne.
Once again, thank you for the supplementary. I'm not an expert in these matters. Officers are far more learned than I. However, I will refer members and Max to the response, which says that the process of a timetable review involves no element of consultation with service users or stakeholders. So we'll do what we can as a department to bear influence on these proposals where we can, but the actual process does not involve consultation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr Payne. Thank you. We're now coming to item number 5, to receive the position statement from members of the Cabinet. And call on the leader, please.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Before I go on to my position statement, which is written, can I personally thank Brian Roberts, myself, and on behalf of this group for the work he's done. Certainly when he came here, it was Staffordshire's loss and our gain. And I look forward, Brian, to seeing whether you actually end up helping out Northamptonshire, who apparently are in need of a good financial chief executive on a part-time basis. I'm sure you'll help them sort it out. Can I also thank you, Madam Chairman, for mentioning the Records Office and how well they've done. And as members know, that forms part of my portfolio, so I'm particularly proud personally of what they've achieved. On fair funding, you can see what is written down here. The only person that's not being thanked in here, which is my fault, is Andrew Bridgen, who's done a lot of work in helping us to get through the door. It's been very helpful to me in lobbying ministers, etc. But I'll leave the fair funding bit of it. Now it's on the agenda to the man that does all the work on it, which is Byron. On the local industrial strategy, as it says here, we're full square behind the development of a local industrial strategy for Leicester and Leicestershire, as advocated by the government. And I want to place on record again here my thanks to Neil O'Brien, the new member for, I think it's Harbour sort of area, who's helping us out with it no end. For members who don't know, he was a SPAD in that department doing the industrial strategy before he's elected. So he's a very, very good contact for us. Thank you for that, Mo. So, as you can see, we're ambitious on supporting growth in the county. We need to work with the City Mayor and, of course, not only county MPs, but if you Labour guys have any contacts with the City Labour MPs, they're useful to be on board with this, because this will be a bid across Leicester, Leicestershire, and, of course, the local economic partnership. And you can see the 5 key things which we're focusing on, obviously life sciences, logistics, because although we all moan about lots of logistic applications, we are slap bang in the middle of the country, near motorways, so we should play to our strengths. Engineering and advanced manufacturing, space data and digital technology, obviously very key if you look in the city. And again, textiles, design, manufacturing and technology. Again, those are good strengths for us, and we should play to our strengths. And the government will be looking for innovative bids, and they'll be looking for delivery rather than just warm words. So we're working on it as fast as we can. I put in a couple of updates here on Midlands Engine and Midlands Connect, because obviously it's something only I go to as leader. So I can say that we are fully supportive of the Midlands Connect, and I'm an active member of it and go to any meetings that take place, making sure that their projects successfully deliver our prospectus for growth. So it needs to include, as it says in here, things like the A46 Expressway, David Bill's favourite thing in the whole world, railways. These things not only enhance the economy of the county and the city, but they help people travel around. And as HS2 is arriving, we need to ensure that the rest of the infrastructure doesn't get left behind. And I'm actually very supportive of this sub-national transport board, which I think every county is now supportive of it. They've got one for the north. We're a little bit behind them, but we need to get one going if we can, because that's where the government will focus its money on, and it'll need strategic decisions. So sometimes we might have to compromise that A46 might be a good project. Others might suggest another way, but what the government is wanting us to do is to sit down as a national transport body and come up with a solution and a delivery model. They're not interested in 400 projects. They'll just put that in the too difficult to do box. What they want is to come up with 4 or 5, really focus on them, really develop them, and then hopefully we'll get them delivered through that. So obviously the A46 is the main one for us. And of course, it's the main one for a lot of counties, as it goes right up from I think I've said it before, from the southwest right up to the northeast. So we need to concentrate on that. Midlands Connect Strategic Board. Obviously, John Peace is chairman of that as well. So I'm good friends with Sir John, and we need to collaborate effectively on that and hopefully develop for the East Midlands an HS2 Strategic Delivery Board. Again, if we get lots, I'm not being rude to some of the little district councils, but there are 1 or 2 little district councils up around Towton who are a little bit parochial in my view, but we need to have a delivery board to focus on some big strategic things we want to see up there, you know, connectivity back down to our airport and stuff like that, rather than just whinging on about 30, 40 houses here and there, or a leisure centre here and there. Again, the government won't listen to us. They're looking for big strategic things which we can agree on and put to them as of major importance to be delivered. Final point is to I've mentioned that. I've also, yes, the transport for the East Midlands one. So that's East Midlands councils and all the people from the East Midlands. So again, the things in here fit in with what we're trying to deliver. And then finally, one late bit of good news is what is the final one, the Housing and Infrastructure Fund, where I was speaking to Blake and the officers in Blake's department, where we bid 3. We thought we'd be really, really lucky to get 1. And as it happens, we've actually got 2. So we've got substantial monies for initiatives across the southwest of Leicestershire. Now, I think you all know where they are, things like some infrastructure work around Lutterworth Road, some stuff on the M69, some money to develop 20A. These are major, major things. And I think, along with, as well, for Byron and the Melton people, some money for the Melton South bit. So we've still got Sir Alan and our department bidding for this money for the northern bypass for Melton. This gives us money for the southern bit of Melton, where we were just going to be relying solely on Section 106 money. Now we've got money from government to do it as well. So it should be delivered more quickly and will eventually enable Melton to have a complete ring road, almost all the way around the outside, because anybody that goes to Melton knows it's a beautiful town, but completely and utterly clogged up by traffic. So that's really, really good news for Melton. And with that, I think I'll stop and let Byron tell you about the fair funding and make some notes to answer any questions. Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr Galton, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just wait for the microphone to come on. Thank you, Chairman. Thank the leader for his statement covering a number of obviously important issues. He detects a hint of scepticism of the fair funding campaign and whether it's going to deliver for us and actually try and do something to arrest the cuts that we are making month by month, year by year, and the unsustainable situation that we are getting into. And yes, I think it is reasonable to question what the outcome of this process is going to be, and whether, in fact, it is going to result in a better deal for Leicestershire and for other authorities, and avoid the situation that he's referred to, that many authorities are now facing, of getting into the sort of situation that Northamptonshire's in. So, yeah, I mean, for us, it's about the evidence. Where is the evidence? We haven't actually seen any money yet. I was reminded of the phrase that Eric Pickles used to say, show me the money. Nobody has actually talked in any kind of figures about what this new redistribution might look like. And remember, it is not going to be revenue support grant, because next year that runs out. There won't be any for Leicestershire and many other authorities. So we are talking with fiddling, changing the formula in relation to the business rates. That's what essentially we're talking about. And I would just remind Council that only at Cabinet Week last Friday, a further round of deeply unpopular cuts to SEN transport, with people feeling extremely upset, quite emotionally and quite rightly, from sitting in the public gallery, actually seeing people crying at the decision that the Cabinet took with regard to removing that funding for some of the most vulnerable people in our county. So I think we are entitled to question and ask, where is the evidence? And I think that, you saw the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State. I mean, that's the lowest level, isn't it? When are we going to see someone who can actually make these decisions, presumably needs in the Treasury? So effectively, we went down to London and we saw the monkey. What we need to see is the organ grinder. I think that's the message from that one, Chairman. Now, the others are kind of all linked, aren't they? Because they're about growth and about meeting housing requirements, and there's a lot of information here. And I think particularly on the Housing Infrastructure Fund, it would be helpful if the Director could provide some more information. The leaders referred to where where that money might go, but I think we need to understand the timescale, because it refers to the strategic growth plan up to 2036. Well, of course, that plan's meant to go to 2050. So when would this money actually be forthcoming? Because we know that the need is now. There is major congestion on our road network, and we're approving planning applications week in, week out that is only going to make that situation worse, because we're not able to find any sustainable grounds to refuse them, not even when that, as I say, that congestion can be extremely problematic for the existing local community. So I appreciate that we've got to target any funding, but I think we could do with some more information about the timescales, where this money is going to be invested and what we hope to achieve with it. Now, the final point I'd make is kind of all linked to the growth plan. There is a rumour that this consultation is going to be extended, and I think the quicker those involved in this, and I look further back from the leader to the chairman of the MAG, the quicker there can be an announcement on that, frankly, the better, because there are people burning the midnight oil thinking they've got to get their submission in by the 5th of April. So if you're going to extend it by 6 months, please tell everyone that that is what... 6 weeks. Please tell everyone that that is going to happen. But the final point I'd make is that the leader is enlisting the support of the new MP for Harborough, Neil O'Brien, who shares our ambition. And of course, everyone would share ambition to have a positive industrial local strategy. But he's kind of all linking this to the expressway. You know, I've been to a number of meetings on this. I would say that there are large numbers of people that are less than enthusiastic about having a dual carriage expressway built through the middle of the countryside and the implications for that, and questioning how actually people will get in and out of Leicester. It might get you round Leicester. Talks here about getting across Leicester and round Leicester if you want to avoid it. What about people who want to get into Leicester if you put all these houses along this road? So there are lots of questions coming out about this. And, you know, it says that Neil O'Brien shares the ambition. Well, Chairman, he's busy delivering a survey in parts of his constituency asking people what they think about this growth plan and the expressway. I would admire him for that. That's the right thing to do. We're having a consultation. So it would be a bit odd if he's actually already nailing his colours to supporting this, while at the same time carrying out a consultation. So I think we need some more clarity on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Galton. Dr Eynon, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is, in a sense, comes in two halves, this position statement. One is about the economy of Leicestershire, and the first section is the economy here. So I'm going to talk about the leader's comments about the economy, and of course we all want to support an improved economy in Leicestershire. And I'm very pleased to see that we are going to be supporting key industries, life sciences, logistics, engineering and advanced manufacturing, etc., etc. Very good. And the A46 expressway, yes, I can understand why it's controversial, but I think we have to think, how is this going to be implemented? One of the key issues I think we need to make sure is in this plan is that those people who work in these industries, they need to be able to find affordable places to live. And they need to be able to get to those jobs without requiring to own and run a private car. So I think this is where it's going to be interesting to look at the Housing Infrastructure Fund and to what extent that is going to be able to help with that. One of the biggest problems I have in my patch, getting people to accept much needed housing development, is the lack of infrastructure. In fact, back in 2013, when I was first attempting to become a member of this council, infrastructure first was my favourite tagline. It's very nice to hear that we're now getting infrastructure at last. And again, with the Midlands engine, this is again part of the same story, and it's about time too. I see that we're going to be making the most of HS2. I can understand why we're not kind of welcoming it, because it still has this tendency to drive right through our patch without giving us very much. I'm pleased to hear that we are going to continue to make a fuss about getting it connected up with parts of Leicestershire, and particularly the airport, because then, again, this is about transporting workers to places of employment. If you are on the minimum wage, you can't afford to run a car, or at least not one that's legal. I'm pleased to see that You should try living in my street. I'm pleased to see that we're transforming east-west connectivity. I still have this fantasy that this isn't just about the Leicester to Coventry line, but might also include the line that is in the top 10 for the Campaign for Better Transports, routes that would improve connectivity and would make a big difference, not just to Leicestershire, but further to the west. And I will be continuing to campaign on that one, as I'm sure you're aware, for the National Forest line. So to come back to, yes, we sorted out the economy. I just wonder if sometimes, is that what we're here for as a county council? Are we sometimes not forgetting what our purpose is, that most of our work is adult social care? And it is that is really suffering. And I think that Councillor Galton has made that point very well. And I'm going to reiterate it by mentioning I think it's 2,600 people we're going back to say, oh, do you really need that little care package, that person who comes in and does your cleaning once a week or your shopping once a week? Surely your daughter could do it. This is not good. Surely these are the vulnerable people that we should be here for. And that is why I have been sceptical about the fairer funding, because I too understand just how difficult it is to turn the Titanic that is the current strategy. And that is why I think I'd like to remind members that I actually sat next to Councillor Byron Rhodes at the Local Government Association conference last year and gave him our full support from the Labour group for fairer funding. And I sincerely hope that we win, but I am sceptical that we will. I do hope we do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Onion. Mr. Bill, thank you.
Chairman, I'm grateful to the leader to remind me about my support for railways, and hearing Terry speak reminds me that the east-west connectivity should include routes to the east as well as routes to the west. And in fact, as my friend Ivan knows, that he and I share concerns that the direct route to the east was broken in February 1959, and should a decision to which I've been doing my best to rectify ever since. Therefore, you're quite right. You're quite right, Nick. Some of us are involved with this. The bullet points here listed under Midlands Connect are interesting, aren't they? Because they all, as Simon has referred to, this brings out a whole string of other questions, which we haven't got time to go into this afternoon. But could I just ask a question about the A5 growth corridor? I think this is one in which there is pretty well unanimous agreement that this is a scheme that should be supported, all the way from the M42 down to the M1. I think everybody who's given it any thought at all agrees that road should be dualled and made safer and made more use of. But there is an issue associated with that, and that is the fact that some of us, I'm looking at Ivan again, represent communities which live very close to the A5. And when anything goes wrong, all right sometimes, what happens is traffic comes off the A5 and comes through Ivan's villages and comes through Hinckley and causes total congestion. And it's not just ordinary traffic, it is heavy, it's HGVs which come all through the day and all through the night. And I was at a very angry public meeting last Friday when people in the area I represent were pleading with me to put the case for taking the HGVs off Nuts Lane. Nuts Lane is a bridge, is a road which contains a bridge built in 1804 for horses and carts, and is now used for 40-ton vehicles. And it's a situation which everybody regards as dangerous because it's also the route by which children walk to school. I have written to the director and to various other highway officers about this on many occasions, but the situation grows worse by the day. And all I'm asking really this afternoon is, We are now supporting the A5 strategy, as I believe it, from last Friday. Can we also please support a consultative exercise so that those communities that live close to the A5 and are affected have a say in what can be done to try to improve and maintain their quality of life?
Thank you very much,
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Bill. Thank you. Mr. Walsh? Welsh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask the leader a relatively simple question, hopefully, to get a little bit more clarity about the HIF bid. In the wording here talks about a step along the road. When the leader spoke, I got the hint that we'd secured the bid. And I just want to understand, have we, because I know the money's involved are substantial, have we actually been told that we've got that, or that we've moved to the next stage? And if it's that the latter, when would we know that we have secured that funding? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Rhodes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been sitting here trying to work out who was the most miserable, Mr. Galton or Dr. Einan. Mr. Galton wins. I mean, really, he looks on the black side of everything. Well, the world looks black and you're feeling glum. You can bet your boots there's worse to come. That's his motto. Look, on the fair funding, the Secretary of State has announced that fair funding is going to be implemented from 2020. So they are now working on the formula. When I met Mr. Rishi Sunak, you're right to say, he's the Parliamentary Under Secretary at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. He's also the Minister for Local Government. He has been charged with the task of coming up with the new funding system. That's his job. So I'm talking to the right man. I found him actually to be quite a remarkable new minister because he's extremely numerate. His qualifications, if you look him up on Google, are quite outstanding. And I think he's absolutely the right man for the job. He also told me, after we'd discussed a few things with him, that the Leicestershire model was very much the guidelines for the model which the government are considering. So what now has to be worked out? What has to be worked out are the various factors which go into it. And he's right in some respects, and possibly Dr. Einan is too, about some of the resistance that's being put up by other councils, particularly London councils, who feel that they might be losers. And if you look at the LGA, they're consistently concerned about this because London councils are a major part of the LGA and they want to look after them, so naturally. The other group that tend to be making a lot of noise, but actually don't really amount to too much in the real context of local government, are the district councils. There's about £45 billion spent in local government each year, and the district councils account for 2.5 billion of that. That's 5%. And you'd think they were half of it to hear them. And there's a danger that they will be listened to, and some of the factors and ideas that they're putting forward will be incorporated into the formula and distort it. One of the big factors that's being pressed is the question of sparsity and density. There's little evidence for including a major factor for sparsity. It does affect collection of waste in rural areas. It does have a small influence on adult social care in rural areas too, but not on much else. The bigger problem is density factor, which is in the present formula, which is about 8 times the magnitude of the sparsity factor, and obviously helps the cities and councils in London and so on, the larger urban areas. So I drew that to the attention of the Minister, and he's taken note of it, and we're providing more evidence to support that. So I am actually very optimistic about fair funding. I think over the next 12 months there'll be further discussions. The consultation has just closed. It closed on the 12th of March, and we put in a robust submission, as you would expect, and that's available, of course, for councillors to read and anyone else. So we're on our way. and we will, in due course, I'm very confident, and I'll make the prediction in the Chamber today, that in 2020 we will start to see improved funding for this council, and that's what I look forward to. And I have every confidence that that's what we shall deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Mr. Mullaney, thank you.
In terms of fair funding, we've seen recently what the cost of the lack of fair funding for Leicestershire is through the increases in council tax and the cuts to some very vital services. And OK, we have a suggestion here that things may improve in 2020. The problem is that's still 2 years down the line, and we're suffering from cuts to services and tax rises now, and some of the most essential services, special needs, transport and so on, are going now. So saying that it may change in 2 years' time is not much consolation for those who are losing out. And, OK, we're still at the situation where we keep going to London, having meetings and saying, oh, yes, it's going to get better. But this has really been the situation for many years. And, OK, we've gone to see the Parliamentary Under-Secretary, and I'm sure he's a very talented individual, but the reality is Whitehall and the ministries run from a very rigid hierarchy, and within the hierarchy of the ministries, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary is the most junior, lowly, uninfluential role within the government. And if this is going to be pushed through, it is going to get a lot of resistance from other councils who are likely to lose out. And to get that kind of politically difficult thing through for Leicestershire to benefit, other places will have to lose out. It's going to need high-level buy-in from the government. It's going to need people like the Chancellor and other people to be pushing this through to get it through, because there will be resistance. So whilst I hope we will see fair funding being delivered, we're being told, well, it might come in a few years' time. Well, people are losing their services now. Their council taxes are going up now. I also noticed that the leader mentioned Northamptonshire County Council. I mean, Northamptonshire County Council is brought up as if it's this leper of councils whose example must be ignored and avoided at every cost. In that case, why did we loan £5 million to Northamptonshire County Council if it's such a bad authority? Why did we do that? So I say, yes, I hope we see fair funding delivered, but we really need senior ministerial agreement and support for this. And until we get the senior members of the Cabinet to agree to this, it's going to be very difficult to get that buy-in politically from across the government to get the fair funding that Leicestershire needs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mullaney. Mr. Blunt, thank you.
During the speech from Dr. Einon, at the end, she sort of meandered into a sort of general comments about adult social care, and I couldn't just let that go by, especially since she did something similar at the last full council. People on this side are very proud of how we're coping with enormous pressures on adult social care. Dr. Einon will know that we haven't got an endless amount of money to look after every single adult who needs help. And to say that we would be giving up on people in a casual way, I find to be a little bit insulting. I'm very proud of this portfolio. If you have any concerns, one of your members is on scrutiny, which is very good and works well, and you indeed could approach me directly. We are doing the very best in a very difficult situation, using very sparse resources to be under budget, but we could be over budget next year. Please, if you have a real concern, come to me rather than just allude that we're not doing a very good job. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Mr. Rushton, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Byron has answered generally on fair funding, but Mr. Mullaney has gone a little bit further. We do have a government commitment to fair funding, announcements by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. And you wouldn't expect us not to do our best for Leicestershire, and that is what we're doing. And to be fair to Byron, he is putting in hundreds of hours on this campaign, up and down to London, and we are seeing every single person we can possibly see. Byron's got himself in to see the senior SPADs in the Treasury, senior SPADs in the Prime Minister's office. We see ministers. You may well belittle Rishi Sunak, his position, but at the moment he's an exceedingly influential man. And I can tell you something, he is definitely going places. He's a really, really intelligent guy, and it's really, really useful to have him on side. And it's certainly better than going to see one of your half-dozen ragtag and bobtail Liberal members down in House of Parliament who actually do not have any influence whatsoever. On the Housing Investment Fund, Simon and Mr Walsh inquired. I don't know the full details. It was only announced at 2:15. I will undertake to write to all members to tell you about the Housing Infrastructure Fund and when it's scheduled and what it is, so we're all aware of where it is. But in my opinion, it is generally pretty good news that we've got it. Can I say to Terry, obviously I agree with you absolutely entirely. Affordable houses for young and old people to live in the appropriate locations are what should drive us. There are plenty of people who can't afford to buy a house, young people with jobs. We need more affordable houses for them. We need smaller houses for the old so they can downsize and free up the bigger ones. And of course, we need affordable rented houses as well. So I'm entirely on board with you on that, as is this administration. On the National Forest Line, you know that our answer. Of course, we support the National Forest Line in principle. But this is a county council. It is not the sort of place that can deal with the substantial capital costs of a railway line and run it. But if the government choose to give the money to the National Forest Railway and make it part of a franchise, we will do our best to advertise it and try and promote people to use it. But in the present circumstances, and I can't see, even with fair funding, that we'll get the money to run railway lines, because it's not part of our day-to-day job. As you say, we should be concentrating on old people and children, but we are supportive of it as a matter of principle. David Bill, on the A5 growth corridor, it's not just important to us, the A5 growth corridor, it's important to a whole phalanx of counties, again, running all the way up, and it needs a strategic look at. It's mentioned in Midlands Connect, etc., and we will do our best to promote it. In particular to your Knutsford Lane, I don't know particularly Knutsford Lane, I'm sure Ivan will, and Blake's been here, and we'll have a look to see if we can try and help Knutsford Lane. What, sorry? Nuts Lane. But I do congratulate you on managing to mention 1959 for trains and 1804 for bridges, all in one speech, is a credit to your knowledge.
Thank you, Mr Rushton. We now come to lead member for Children and Families, so call on Ivan Hold, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My position statement, as you can see, covers a number of areas of work across the department, and I want to start with child sexual exploitation. There was a National CSE Awareness Day last Sunday, and the multi-agency hub at Wigston was open to publicise the work that goes on across the agencies. It is something that I regard as absolutely one of the most important aspects of the role that I undertake, and I'm very proud of the fact that it was our social care people working with the police that put us into the position that we were in the last time members attended a briefing by the Chief Constable where he referred to where we were as cutting edge. His words, actually not mine. However, further proof of how well that is regarded came this week with an invitation from the Westminster Forum for Donna Smalley, who is one of our employees in charge of the hub, to go and speak at a national conference on the work of CSE. You don't get invites like that very often, and it's an accolade, basically coming from London, of the work that we do here. The hub has also taken on a further role in identifying and supporting young people who go missing and overseeing the completion of return interviews. Those on overview and scrutiny will recall we were criticised for the return interviews in the Ofsted report, and obviously we've taken steps basically to address that. We've actually seen reductions in the numbers of children and young people reported missing, alongside better planning and support to young people who go missing and place themselves at risk. One of the difficulties in making that statement to this council is that you might accuse me of misleading you, because you're aware of the fact that there are over 600 children placed in the county by other authorities. And it's sometimes difficult initially to unscramble if it's one of our children who's gone missing or one from another authority who's gone missing. And I can't say that I'm completely comfortable with that fact. Like other local authorities, we've seen another increase in the number of children in our care. It's gone up from 510 last year, 552 currently. We've been working very hard in the department to increase the number of foster carers and recruiting carers for specific groups. For example, a parent and baby, teenage woman with a child is extremely difficult to actually find a foster home for, as are children frequently with SEN. As a result of this work, inquiries from prospective foster carers continue to grow, and this year we are on track to meet our target of an increase of 25 carers. In fact, I'm hoping that we're going to be closer to 30 rather than the 25 mark. There's been a range of options, and I think everybody in the council, from comms to the department, have been involved in looking at and planning and seeing how we can improve the success rate. We're told by the foster parents that they're particularly pleased with the support that we give them, the follow-up support, and a number of those who were registered with independent fostering agencies have actually asked to join the Leicestershire scheme, which I think speaks for itself. One of the areas that scrutiny holds me accountable for is stability of placements. I know from comments made to me in the social care panel by Jeff Walsh, it's a particular interest of his. We have had this year 8% of our placements disrupted compared to 15% last year, which is very good progress, and which exceeds all the authorities that we are compared to. So it's very good to say that. And I have to give credit here, Chair, to Paul Meredith, the interim director, because he's developed, with the aid of officers, what is called a dedicated placement support team. And over the last 12 to 18 months, the team, working with other staff, have supported young people to remain in placement, to move successfully from residential to family-type placement, and for others to return home to family or to live independently. I think that's a very good development, and I hope it continues to have the success it's enjoyed so far. Moving on to the area of my brief that was added last year, that of community safety, very pleased to report that we have, in partnership with the police, launched this Ask for Angela campaign, which enables people who might feel uneasy on a date in pubs or clubs to discreetly approach staff and request assistance. I haven't got any stats on what the take-up is or what the outcomes are at the moment, but I hope I can come back to full council and give further information on the success of this development in the future. Very pleased to show you this. You're all corporate parents. Some of you might not understand what that means, and I hope to enlighten you. This Fox News is the virtual school which deals with all the children in our care. If anybody would like a copy, they let me know. I will arrange for it to come to them. Very pleased that the County Youth Forum, Cycle, has developed this emotional well-being pack, which is for secondary schools. And again, if people want to have a copy of this, I can arrange for them to get it. But this is young people's work. This is not officers' work. Officers have obviously been involved in it, but essentially it has come from the young people themselves. And then I went with Sarah Russell from the city to a meeting that was packed out 3 weeks ago to launch the Trans Inclusion Toolkit for Schools. We all know that there are a tiny percentage of people who have confusion over their identity, and schools at times feel confused in how they deal with that. This is quite a comprehensive read. I'm personally very proud to be associated with this, if it means that there's a reduction in the bullying that frequently takes place if you're different in schools. Finally, I was at the Walker Stadium for 2 evenings for the annual Achievements of Children in Care Award evenings. We had over 300 of our children in care recognised over the 2 nights. It was a family occasion. You might think, why weren't you invited? And I'll go back and stress the word. It was a family occasion. The foster parents with the child being recognised for achievements, and it was an outstanding success. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I had the pleasure of going to the achievement of these young people in care, and the work that goes on in this council, I was amazed. If you ever get the chance to go to any of these, it was really, really an eye-opener for me, and the children were amazing, and I had the pleasure of giving them all their certificates. What they've achieved was unbelievable, and it was an amazing night, and it was absolutely packed, and the children were so wonderful. It was quite an emotional evening for me. So, thank you. Mr. Sheenan, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Ivan, for a very wide-ranging report. I'll just pick up on the one part of it, though. You mentioned the National CSE Awareness Day that took place on the 18th of March. There was also a CSE Awareness Open Day at Wigston Police Station on the 16th of March, which I attended along with Mr. Kaufman. And I talked to various people, including Donna Smalley, about preventive work, and I was certainly very impressed by the commitment to it. But does Ivan believe that the preventive CSE work which we do, which is vitally important, is sufficiently in scope with respect to our statutory responsibilities to ensure that its funding will be protected from cuts in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheenan. Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd also like to thank Councillor Auld for this position statement. It's a while since we've heard from Ivan in the Chamber, and members will recall that after we had the Ofsted visit, were difficult times in looking at what we'd been doing. I think it's also important that members recognise progress that has been made. There's, I think some of us felt a little uneasy at some of the things that Ofsted reported back, but it's clearly been a useful tool for us to be measured by, to be able to compare against. And I think we're seeing here already some signs of improvement in line with what Ofsted are asking for. But I'd like to just pick up on two things from Ivan's statement. The first one is, I'm sure that members have picked up in the news about Telford, and I don't think we've heard the end of that story. We all remember Rotherham and what went on there, in Oxford, in other towns, and now we hear Telford. And I think the message is clear. There's no room at all for complacency over child sexual exploitation. I visited Wigston and met with Donna now on a number of occasions, and I couldn't be more impressed than the dedication that we have with the team that are based there. But we have to remember that there are other police constables all across the county dealing with young people on a Friday night, late into the morning, finding a 12-year-old girl with some older men and having that instinctive reaction that policemen had in Telford or in Rotherham of seeing the girl as somebody behaving inappropriately, a girl who's loose with her morals. And on that basis is where we have Rotherhams and Telfords occurring. So I think it's just making sure we all remember, we all need to be vigilant. We've all got a role in this. If any of us hear of young people being pressurised, people through texting, through messaging, have parents ringing asking for it, please get in touch with the department, get in touch with Ivan. Don't leave this alone. It's a problem that won't go away unless we're vigilant. The second thing in Ivan's statement I wanted to talk about was fostering. I'm really impressed with the progress we're making in the direction of travel that we've undertaken. I'm particularly pleased with the recruiting of specialised foster carers. The only way we're going to drive down some of those horrendous bills of specialised residential care is to employ people within the county as foster carers, give them the right support and deliver that locally. And it's the right place for young people is to be in a family, not in a residential home. But the point I want to raise is that there's a mention in there of social media. But I want to point out to Ivan that I've now endlessly received on Facebook messages imploring me to become a foster carer. And they look very good and they're really interesting. But every time I look, they're the city council. So let's go back to our comms team. Whatever the city are doing, they're getting these messages out there. They're getting county people involved in those Facebook threads, and we're missing out those people. So I think we need to aggressively have a go and make sure we're batting for the county. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. Mrs. Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add to Ivan's word on fostering. I'm very involved in the fostering work of this council since I was elected in May. I've sat on the fostering panel. And I've observed the good work that goes on in very difficult circumstances for our looked after children. Since last May, I've seen a vast improvement in the work of the fostering department of this council and the commitment to our looked after children. And I would echo Ivor's words that we have many carers now coming over to foster for this council from independent fostering agencies. And that's because of the excellent ongoing support they receive and the training that I don't see anywhere else that we offer them here. I'm very proud to be part of the team here, and I'm very proud of the staff that we have in the fostering department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs Taylor. Mr Old, did you want to come back? Thank you.
I think, Chair, that there are a number of points that have been made that I need to respond to. Cuts in the future. I'm not going to tell you that there aren't going to be any cuts in the future, Sean. I am going to tell you that the verbal undertaking that I've given this council ever since I've occupied this role is that I can't guarantee that nobody will be abused in Leicestershire. But I can guarantee, and will guarantee, that we'll do the very best we can to minimise the risk. And if that means at the end of the day that you have to argue, then you argue. And if you look at this year's budget settlement, Chair, where there was a proposal at one point to cut the supporting Leicestershire families by £385,000, it ended up with £1 million in the budget over a 2-year period, which I think shows the commitment of this side to the fact that we are very aware of the work that we need to do and how we have to fund it. Jeff has mentioned Telford. I can't but be political in my reply. It's a Conservative MP who's listened to the local complaints, and it has still taken her 18 months of hard work to get the police to agree. And he is spot on in his comment. Absolutely spot on. I congratulate him on it. The problem across the country is often somebody who says she's getting what she deserves, or he's getting what he deserves. This is not gender specific. It's often the young women who get in the press. Equally, there are many young men who are trafficked around. And I thank him for those comments. I will make sure that gets back to Donna Smalley. I do go from time to time and watch what takes place when they have their sheets in front of them, now involving the city as well. And I'm not comfortable. You never can be comfortable in this post. But I'm pleased with where we are at the moment. And I think we stand comparison with any other authority in the country. I'm also taking note of what Jeff has said about Facebook messages. I don't go on anti-social media. I'm well known for ignoring it because of its potential for fakeness and over-exaggeration. But if you're getting messages from the city, I will give you an undertaking that when this meeting is finished and I'm back down in the department, I shall be saying, why? And I'll find out the answer and I'll let you know. Deborah Taylor is a new councillor, only been with us just under a year, and she's on the fostering panel. But she's exactly one of the reasons why this council is as successful as it is. You all ask questions. If any of you have read the report on Northamptonshire, and I have, the missing link in that report is asking critical questions. So a few weeks ago, I have an email from Mrs. Taylor that says, was I aware of an article that she had read? I have to say, fortunately, I was, but the fact that she thought it right to get in contact with me was really good. Now, life is not always smooth. I have an email from Nicky Morgan, MP, who raises an issue with me about 2 children in Loughborough. There is a school involved, and the school has never let me know of their dissatisfaction with children's social care here. So we are dependent upon people notifying us. There are 2 people in this chamber, one an existing councillor, one an ex-councillor, who came to see me some years ago about a situation in one of the settlements of the county, and we worked together with the police and we got a good outcome. It was done very quietly and very privately, but I rely on all of you bringing to my attention any worries or any anxieties that you've got, and if you don't do that, it's a child who suffers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Old. We now come to lead member for Environment and Transport, so Mr. Blake. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I'm not sure whether I prefer Mr Payne or Mr Blake, perhaps Mr Blake, but thank you for calling me. I've been asked to bring to Council's attention the excellent, outstanding work of the Highways gritting teams during what has been perhaps the most challenging period of weather we've seen in a long, long time. My position statement, albeit short, is before you, and it contains some stats, and you can see there that road temperatures have gone as low as -8 degrees. And some of you might be aware, I think Mr Galton referred last year to my interest in skiing. So I attend quite a lot of ski resorts, and I can tell you, it's not unheard of for ski resorts to close down because of the road situation and the depth of snow and the conditions on the road. And the same's true in Leicestershire. I'm proud to say, though, that we grit 45% of Leicestershire's roads. There's about 2,500 miles of roads in Leicestershire. And we maintain all of the A roads and grit all of the A roads, most of the B roads and some of the C roads. And we also keep at least one route accessible into Leicestershire villages. And I think our team should be commended for their outstanding efforts in that respect. Some of the other work our gritting teams do that members might not be aware of, it's not just gritting, but they attend incidents and they deal with the actual road closures when necessary, and they liaise with our partners and volunteers, and they support the wider community. And talking about the wider community, I'd also like to put on record our thanks as a council to all those volunteers, the farmers, the snow wardens, that do an outstanding job on behalf of the Leicestershire people during these challenging times. I think it was on the 28th of February, there were no less than 20 farmers out with tractors and snowplows, helping and supporting our gritting teams in dealing with the road network across Leicestershire to keep Leicestershire moving. And I think we should be thoroughly proud of all of their efforts. Finally, I'd like to, well, before I go to my final point, I'd just like to put a special thanks to one particular driver who had an accident between Turlangton and Churchlangton, actually in the Harbour District somewhere that I know particularly well. And their very heavy gritter overturned at the side of the road because of the depth of the snow. Now, we've all experienced driving in wintry conditions and snow conditions, and it's not fun. If we're being honest. And the same is true for our gritter drives. They go out in extreme conditions and they're at the exact same risk as every other motorist and driver on the Leicestershire road. So the fact that this particular driver came into work the next day to do his duty and to keep Leicestershire moving was a credit to him and a credit, I believe, to this council. So finally, Madam Chairman, I just want to inform council that we will be conducting a review of winter maintenance. This isn't something we'll do each and every year, but the review this year will look at the operational procedures and the network control. And we have a 24/7 manned control centre, and we're looking how that can be improved, and also the customer service aspect of that centre. And we'll also be looking at route optimisation. I believe we cover a huge amount of Leicestershire's roads, covering 45% of the roads is something to be proud of, but we'll endeavour to see whether we can extend that and improve that statistic even further. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr Payne. Mr Hunt, thank you.
I'd like to join with Blake Payne in really, firstly, thanking through this medium all the staff who have kept the county moving, as he says. I've done a fair amount of driving recently, and coming back into the county, knowing that, the roads are safe, and in the worst of conditions, I have to say, that the gritters are out there all night in the worst of conditions, and all we're trying to do is to get home. So I felt that very deeply, and I'd like to add our thanks to all the people involved in that. But I'd also like to thank Blake as well, because during this difficult period, one of the heartening things was to receive probably some social media with Councillor Payne standing in the middle between two snowplows. And I thought, if I was in his job, that's what I'd do. Lead from the front. Show everybody that he's not only running the department, he's actually there with the drivers, and I think everybody actually did benefit from the fact that Blake was up there doing his thing. I think in the old days it would have been Mr. Parsons probably, but nowadays we've got a younger model. So that's great. And I'd also finally say, because we've got plenty of time this afternoon, haven't we? But his job is not an easy one. This time of year, it's about gritting. In the summertime, springtime, it's about grass cutting. And in between, it's potholes. So he's getting it every which way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Hunt. Did you want to respond, Mr Payne?
Madam Chairman, if that's the only question off the report, I'll have to say thank you to Max for his comments. Actually, it's a huge amount of fun being lead member for this department, playing with all the big toys that the county owns. And he did miss one point off. Yes, I agree, it is grass cutting in the summer, gritting in the winter, but there's also signage. And I'm pleased to say some of the teams that also do our gritting, they also will be responsible for cleaning our signs, so we'll see a huge improvement, hopefully, this year in the cleanliness of the signs across the county as the programme takes its course. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr Payne. We now come to the lead member of Health and Wellbeing, Mrs Posnett. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My first report as lead member for Health and Wellbeing is about the food plan that we're beginning to launch. Healthy foods are fundamental to good health and to community vitality. The food system, from agricultural production and processing to transportation and marketing, to shop purchases and waste disposal, influences our ability to buy healthy foods and affects our society in profound ways. But food is not just about obesity. Food also has widespread economic implications. The food and drink manufacturing sector in Leicester and Leicestershire's economy is worth £600 million. The second most important economic contributor after non-food manufacturing. Food is also important for tourism in Leicestershire, and I can say that in Melton Mowbray, that industry is responsible, particularly on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, of having a number of buses into the town where people have come to look and to buy, obviously, pork pies and Stilton cheese, because who leaves Melton without those, but also looking at the other things that we're doing. And we've designated ourselves as a rural capital of food. It's important that we take a strategic approach to managing the food system, and I'm delighted to advise the Council that we are developing a food plan for Leicestershire. The plan will provide a focus for our work to address the rising health, care and productivity costs of ill health due to overweight, obesity, to reduce food waste, costs, environmental impacts, and to strengthen our very important local food manufacturing sector. It will also mean that Leicestershire can become a member of the National Sustainable Food Cities network, which in turn would open up funding opportunities and support from national experts in this field. We will be taking a two-strand approach to Leicestershire's food plan, with a county-level strategy developed in tandem with community-level plans at district or equivalent level. A county-wide food plan also fits strategically with the development of the Council's single outcome framework, given its cross-departmental nature, and will continue to outcomes around a strong economy, well-being, and contribute to our waste strategy and set out in the Leicestershire which is set out in the Leicestershire Municipal Waste Management Strategy, which means that we won't be working in isolation as a public health department, but we'll also be working with our environment. And I'm sure you all remember the very successful Love Food, Hate Waste campaign we did that was very popular. And for those of you that know Dr. Matthew O'Callaghan, who used to be a councillor here, the food festival that he arranges in Melton, which is usually the first weekend in October, actually, in the New York Times, he tells me, was listed as the 5th best food fair that there is in the, well, according to Matthew, the universe. But there we are. But I'm really pleased and delighted to be part of this and look at seeing it developing, and hope to bring you some positive reports back in the future. But as part of my previous role, I did have a meeting with what is universally known as the WASPy women. And I know the Lib Dems brought a motion to council last time. And I would like to apologise to Pauline and Andy, who are here today, for the way really that debate went, because it wasn't the way that I think any of us would have wanted it to have gone. We were at fault. None of our women spoke. It was men that spoke and not women. And that could be because some of us it doesn't affect, and so don't see the importance. But the leader did arrange to meet with them, but unfortunately Nick was called away, and I met with a group of ladies, and we had a very open and frank discussion, and one that I appreciated, and Pauline tells me that they did. But this has all come about by a decision that was made by the coalition government to bring forward the date for the equalisation of the retirement age for men and women. Whilst it was accepted that the retirement age for both men and women should be the same, the WASPI concerns centred on the timing of and information provided to women born in the 1950s who already had made their retirement plans and then faced a significant reduction in the pension or would have to wait longer for their pensions. One of the main concerns was in relation to the notification of the changes, and the Work and Pensions Committee of the House of Commons concluded that more could and should have been done to communicate the changes. The responsibility for communicating these changes rests with the Department of Works and Pensions, and any women who feel that the DWP have failed in their responsibility to do so can and should take the matter up firstly with the DWP, and failing that, which raised the matter with the Ombudsman. The government's position is that the changes proposed by the coalition government were debated extensively in Parliament, and a concession was made prior to the passing of the Act, which reduced the delay that anyone would experience in claiming their state pension relative to the previous 1995 timetable to 18 months. This concession will cost approximately £1.1 billion, and to meet the demands of the WASPs, that would cost an estimated £30 billion, a cost which would have to be borne by working-age people. I have considerable sympathy for the WASPI campaign and for those women whose retirement plans have been adversely affected. An all-party parliamentary group has been set up, and I am pleased it has taken up the campaign on behalf of the WASPs. That is the right forum for such action, as this is a matter for central government. At the meeting with WASPI, it was clear that there was a need for more information on pensions generally. And following the meeting, Ian Howe, who was present with my meeting, the pensions manager, offered to speak to the local WASPI group about pensions taxation, to expand their knowledge and understanding on the clear understanding that he cannot offer any financial advice, is there totally by invitation and not to influence or support the WASPI in any way. Ian has offered to speak to those in our local government pension schemes also who are affected by the changes. I think this is a practical way in which we can help such people, and I was pleased to have met them and I'm pleased to give this report.
Thank you, Mrs. Posnett. Mr. Galton. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank Mrs. Posnett for her statement, but as she points out, this arose from a notice of motion that this group moved back in December, led by Mrs. Broadley, who unfortunately can't be here today for personal reasons. I find it pretty extraordinary that this is the format then, that it comes back to Council, because let's just remind ourselves what that motion sought to achieve. Yes, it recognised that it was the government's responsibility, and the motion called upon the government to reconsider the transitional arrangements and the compensation for women born in the 1950s affected by the changes. It didn't demand the Council to do anything else. And as Mr. Mullaney reminded us, that had been accepted by councils up and down the country, both locally and nationally, and of all political persuasion, including many Conservative county councils. So at that time, in December, before Christmas, what was the response? What was the response of the administration, who could have accepted this motion, would not have needed to upset the local WASPI campaign, who thought that they could get cross-party support for what they were trying to achieve. And I went back because I needed to remind myself, and I listened on the tape to some of the things that male members of the council said. Mrs Posnett has reminded us that they were saying, well, we're not going to support this because there's a massive problem and that working age people would have to pay for it, and that there was a substantial cost of up to 30 billion. And effectively then there was an amendment moved, Madam Chairman, which frankly was a wrecking amendment. It was a completely different amendment to the motion. It completely negated it. And frankly, it was an insult to the people that had come here on that day in December to ask this council to support their campaign. It had no cost, no direct financial implication. We've had a number of those sorts of motions in the past. But unfortunately, the key people in the administration couldn't bring themselves to support a perfectly well-founded, a perfectly researched, and it wasn't politically motivated in any sense. It was looking for the councils to support. And unfortunately, that opposition was led by the Deputy Leader, Mr Rhodes, and seconded by Mr Shepherd. And I hope that today they feel... I think they should apologise, not to us, but they should apologise to those ladies in the WASPI campaign who were simply trying to raise quite legitimate issues and, as I say, get the support of their largest democratically elected local council in Leicestershire to support them, which is what many councils have done elsewhere. So I welcome the statement by Mrs Posnett, but then there actually needs to be a proper report at some point on this, and this council needs to say something firm as a statement, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Galton. Dr Onion, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I too welcome Mrs Posnett's apology to the WASPI women for the appalling debate, and I'm not going to reiterate what has been said so well by Councillor Galton, and I will be leaving this to our lead on the WASPI issue. And so I'm going to confine my remarks to the Leicestershire Food Plan, which is a much easier issue because, of course, we can welcome this. Food is not only important for healthy bodies, but as we know, for a healthy economy here in Leicestershire. And it is nice to see a cross-cutting campaign that is going to take into account not just health, but our industrial strategy and environment and waste. I think this is an excellent piece of work. I am also reminded of something that happened just before Christmas, though. When we put out a tweet telling people that 6 sprouts equals 1 portion. I have at the moment a particular interest in these kind of adverts. And of course we got accused of being food Nazis. So there is a risk in campaigns like this. Another issue that I think we need to make sure goes into this, and I think we really do need to be proud of this, because sustainable food cities, as I understand, is usually cities. So we've really done well to get ourselves in as a county. So that's really good. But I'm worried that there's nothing in here about the kind of industrial level of food waste. If we're thinking of food waste just as people tipping a few sprouts into their bin, that's not good enough. We are seeing huge amounts of waste coming from business, and that is wrong. And we're also seeing them avoiding their landfill by passing this food in the form of to food banks. Now, food banks, should they exist at all, is a question. We can all feel slightly warm and cuddly when we buy an extra tin and pop it into the food bank, but I don't feel warm and cuddly at all at the thought that someone is that desperate that they have to go to one. So I do hope that that is there in the strategy, is how we ensure that good food is available for all, and not through charity, but through having an economy that is fair for all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr Einan. Mrs Newton, thank you.
Thank you very much. As most of you know, we are really we support WASPI Women against pension inequalities. They're really campaigning to reverse the iniquitous changes to the State Pension Act, which when implemented will result in the state pension age for women increasing to 65 in November of this year and 66 in October 2020. The background to this is that over 20 years ago, the government required millions of older women to stay in the workforce for longer and to equalise the pay for men and women. This will militate against women born in the 1950s who have not been given enough time to really make alternative pension plans. There are 3.5 million women in this age group affected by the increase in their pension age, and many of them will face a life in poverty. And it's also the case that many women in this age group are actually acting as unpaid carers for parents and partners. A bit of research I'd done many years ago showed I was doing young carers, and this woman that rang me and said to me, "What about me?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "I'm 70 years of age and I'm caring for my mother who's 90. So there are many, many older people caring for women, and many of those women have very reduced benefits. A question that the Minister concerned hasn't really addressed is why such a policy didn't come hand in hand with proper protection for those most at risk. Yet again, it's women who are paying the price for this government's inaction. I don't think the Minister really has got it, that many women are extremely angry and all he can talk about is the cost of the public purse. Again, it's the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Has he really looked at the human outcomes of his decision and government policy? The government is implementing stage-age pension reforms without adequately considering the full impact of these changes in women. Perhaps it should consider what many EU countries are doing, and they're actually doing bridging pensions over a period of years, which actually helps women in this position. And I understand that at present, WASPI women are crowdfunding to raise the finance to actually carry out a legal campaign against the pension changes. And I, for one, hope they are successful. I mean, there's been a good initiative by the Lib Dems for calling for the government to cut corporation tax by 17% by 2020. And this money could actually be used to help WASPI women. So I understand that the complainant has said that the cost is 30 billion. But if you, as I said earlier, if you say you do this over 10 years, that's 10 billion a year. And I think that's affordable for this government. And 3 billion a year over a decade too, that would help too. But I think that we should follow the trends of the European countries, for example, Netherlands, who are actually doing this, what I call bridging movements. So I would like to sort of say, thank you for meeting with them, Pam, but I do wonder whether or not you could actually work a bit harder at getting your government to change its mind on WASPI Win. And actually that particular age group are quite an active age group, and a lot of votes there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. Mr Rushton, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I first of all thank Pam for the work she's done in meeting the WASPI Win, and I apologise that I couldn't get to the inaugural meeting. I did meet Pauline and Andy this lunchtime, and as it says in Pam's report, we do have considerable sympathy for the WASPI campaign, and if I do see ministers, I will take up their case on our behalf of reiterating that we think they have been disadvantaged. There's one thing that I cannot put up with, and that is Simon Galton. You brought this motion to full council. You didn't consult us at all. You used it entirely for political benefit. Now, I can say to you, I think if Terry or anyone from the Labour group would have brought this motion from the WASPI women, they would have come to us and would have agreed something to put through. You went wrong the moment you brought it here and trying to turn it into a political football to damage us as a party here. That is where you went wrong. Your whole group, you'd never all turn up to the meetings. You're loads down again today. And to say that you did it in the best possible interests of WASPI women is a downright untruth. You did it for the best possible interests of what you thought your group would like to do. So I'm sorry that you did it that way. If you'd have done it the proper way, consulted us, we could have agreed and passed something by this council. And I think the WASPI women that I've spoken to, and it's not just Pauline Andy today, I have told them where they went wrong. Don't bring anything to Liberals. They'll only try and play politics with it.
Mr Mullane. Thank you.
Firstly, thank you to Pam Posnett, for bringing this issue forward to the Council. And if I can pay tribute again to Pauline Goom and the other people in the WASPI campaign who have taken this issue up tirelessly. I mean, to refer to Councillor Rushden's remarks, the only person that damaged the Conservative Party in that debate was Councillor Rushden by imposing a 3-line whip to get all his councillors to vote against a WASPI motion that lots of Conservative councils across Britain have supported. These motions have been supported by many Conservatives, so I don't understand why he decides to isolate himself from other Conservatives who've supported the WASPI campaign. Thousands of 1950s women living in Leicestershire missed out on their pension arrangements due to a lack of notice and didn't have the time to change their situation and therefore have had their standard of living hit, and that's why this is an important campaign. The WASPI campaign has been supported by over 130 councils across the country, including many Conservative councils, including neighbouring Rutland County Council, and the Conservatives on Oadby and Wigston voted for the WASPI campaign as well, just the day before you voted against it here. So if you consulted with your Conservative colleagues in Oadby and Wigston, you might have been able to get a unified line in favour of the WASPI campaign. If the Conservative County Council wants to show its support for the WASPI women, then all it needs to do is to agree to signing the pledge. It was incredibly disappointing that Linda Broadley and I put this motion forward expecting to get full support from everyone, and then it was incredibly disappointing when the Conservatives voted it down. The best way that the Conservative leadership can demonstrate to the women affected is to join the more than 130 councils that have supported the WASPI campaign, to do the right thing for the women of Leicestershire who've been affected, to sign the WASPI pledge. So I say to Councillor Posnett today, can she agree to the cost-free, because it's not going to cost the county any money, the cost-free decision for Leicestershire County Council to join those more than 130 councils, including Conservative councils, join it by signing the WASPI pledge? Because if you agree to that today, that's everything done. We're now in agreement. We're now supporting the WASPI women, and we can find a settlement that's agreeable to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mullane. Mr Charlesworth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
You're next. You're on the list.
Thank you. I'll start with the bit that I wasn't going to say, but clearly Mr Rushden feels it's our fault. Well, and that our members aren't here today. No. This wasn't a Liberal motion to start with. This was brought to the Liberal group by Councillor Broadley, who can't be here today because her husband's going through particularly difficult chemo at the moment and her daughter is going through a very difficult birth at the moment. So that is the reason one of our members isn't here, and she would have loved to have been here and responded to your criticism of this group, because it wasn't political. It came from that sole member who also took it to Oadby and Wigston, got it passed there unanimously. We've got the reply from Guy Oppenheim, which exactly mirrors the comments in the amendment that was put down by your two Cabinet colleagues. Through you, Chair, beg your pardon. But getting back to the position statement, I thank Pam Posnett for the apology, but I'm afraid it's too little too late. It's too late because this should have been done last year when the motion was put down. It would have cost them nothing. And it's too little because, although it's offered them some advice and stuff, that doesn't help. What the WASPI women needed was support from this council, along with all the other councils who have supported it, to put pressure on central government to have a rethink. I mean, men of my age group, we've had our years put back, but nowhere near to the extent of the WASPI women. They needed our help. And it wasn't politics here. That amendment was a wrecking amendment. That was political. Anything Liberal Democrats put forward, you deliberately, willfully try and destroy. I've been here since 2005, and I have never seen members look so uncomfortable and awkward when we came to the recorded vote. Several abstained, I understand. They looked dreadful. And clearly after that meeting, there was a bit of rancour in the Conservative group. And that's why we're here today discussing this. So, thanks for the apology, but you had your opportunity. Motions are put down from all groups without speaking to other groups. But trying to twist this on its head, and particularly having a go at our members who can't be here for very valid and personal reasons, I find deplorable.
Thank you, Mr Charlesworth. Mrs Radford, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for that outburst. I thought you'd forgotten me.
Mrs Radford, you were on the list.
That's all right.
You were in the right order. Thank
right,
you.
OK. I'm not going to speak on the WASPI women, but I did have pleasure to meet them at lunchtime after having been invited by Pam. I'm going to go on and speak about the food plan. I'm not sure whether councillors are aware, but the county do support local areas in supporting groups in doing what to do with food that could go to the landfill. I had pleasure in being invited to a social kitchen out at Earl Shilton Way, where food which would otherwise have gone to waste from a supermarket, and showing how to cook different food and different ingredients. And it was amazing what they did manage with some stuff that I hadn't even heard of. It's run by volunteers, but it's supported by an officer from the county. And following on that, I've had meetings with the officers at Charnwood to see whether or not we're going to put it out in Charnwood and hopefully put it out to the rest of the area in the county, because it was very worthwhile. And Mr O'Shea, who was mayor of the area, came along, and we had a really lovely lunch, and it was really diverse. So I do think we don't really promote what the county do out there in the area. And as I say, it was very worthwhile, and I learned how to do something with the food that I would have never have tried otherwise.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Mrs. Posnap, do you want to respond?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I made my statement about the WASPI women. I did apologise. Some of that apology was personal. I do support and sympathise with them, but that's a personal decision of mine. I am working with some female friends who I've got in the House of Parliament and the House of Lords, and going along that line. I'm not out for big headlines at all. I do what I want to do and what I believe in. And I'm not going into any sort of name-calling or any emotive subjects at all. But thank you all for your comments. I've listened to them, I've taken them on board. As I said, I've enjoyed meeting the ladies, and will continue to be in touch with them if that's what they would like to. As far as the food plan, the food project is concerned, I think it's a really exciting time, and it's not something that we're doing in isolation. And it's still maintaining some of the services we do, like obesity and those sorts of things, but it's working towards them with a different angle and with different partners. And I think the waste bit of it is something that is vitally important. So thank you all for that. I look forward to reporting on those in future, and looking also for your support in what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Posnett.
Under Standing Order 8, I wish to formally move the following motion: that the WASPI issue raised by the lead member for Health and Wellbeing in her position statement is referred to the Cabinet for consideration.
Thank you.
Save a vote, I don't mind it going there.
Sorry?
The vote, we'll accept it coming to Cabinet for consideration.
Thank you.
We're going to have a vote, I think.
Vote. Oh, has it got to be read out, the actual motion? Just all in favour. Can you just calm down a minute, members, please? Can we just vote all in favour, please? Any against? That's passed. Okay. Thank you. We now come to item number 6 on the agenda. And this is acceptance of a delegation from Rutland County Council functions under the Care and Mental Health Acts. Mr Rushton.
Chairman, I don't think it requires any debate. It's something which we want to. I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Is it all agreed? Thank you. We now come to the report of the Employment Committee, pay policy, and it's Mr Rose.
Madam Chairman, I move to the motion on the Green Order paper that the County Council's pay policy statement for 2018-19 referred to the report of the Employment Committee be approved. We do this each year to set out, and it's a statutory requirement that we should, the details of our pay policy. The figures recorded in it, of course, the pay figures that we had last year. The pay settlement, which will apply in the future, has not yet been agreed with all the unions, so we can't update figures yet. In due course, I'm expecting that there will be an agreement and figures will be adjusted. And I don't think I have anything to add to that, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Then a seconder, please.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favour? Acceptance? Sorry?
Does anyone want to speak?
Oh, does anybody want to speak on it? I didn't see any hands go up. Sorry? Yeah, is it agreed? Oh, I didn't see any hands go up. Was that it? Thank you very much, members, for attending the meeting, and there is now tea and biscuits. Thank you.